Today's Quickbytes topic is windshield security labels. Today we will discuss windshield security labels and how enabling this functionality can increase the level of access control and security to help protect your data. I will now turn it over to Ryan to begin our presentation.
Thank you, Melissa. Good afternoon, everyone. As Melissa said, today we're going to go through security labels and how they can be implemented in PDM Link and how they can help your company both govern access controls and hide sensitive data. So the first thing we'll do is we're going to take a look at how to address these different options within PDM Link and how security labels can handle that one aspect of additional access controls. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is how security labels work to basically apply a label to a windshield object type, where here it can take a predefined set of values. So for instance, an administrator can set different values that they want to apply to these labels to govern different kinds of things. So we'll actually take a look a little bit later on exactly how we can do that. Depending on which of these values is selected, it pulls from different groups within Windchill. So again, you can have multiple security labels, and you can pull from those different groups. Each label has a null value, and by default, it's not doing anything until somebody applies an actual value to it. And one other thing, too, is you'll see this little shield on the actual object details page when you go and look at it. And for today, what we're using in our screenshots is Windchill 10.2. So for some of you, this may be sort of a first look into the 10.2 interface. For those of you that have used 10.1 or 10.0, this will look somewhat similar as well, just a little bit of color differentiation. So I'm going to use this castle analogy as we kind of explain how security labels work as we go through. So here at a very basic level, we have a castle, which is our Windchill object. We have sort of our gate, which is our security label, and then our knight, which is our user. So the way it is right in the image right now, the knight has access to it. Therefore, he possesses the key, so to speak, or the access to get to that security label.
Okay, so what am I supposed to do? I need to be able to hear Ryan.
Muted.
Second part is take a look here, and the knight does not have the key in this case, so therefore he's not in the appropriate group and can access the castle. So again, this is how you can govern beyond your normal access controls whether or not a knight has access or does not have access to those objects. As we said before, there's also the ability to have multiple security labels. So for instance, in this case, the knight has the ability to, he has the ITAR requirements. But here we've added two different levels of security to that particular object as well. So again, this could be something, sensitive corporate data, and then maybe something that can only be seen at the executive level, might be your level 1. So he does meet the ITAR requirements, but does not meet the other level requirements. Therefore, he cannot see the object. This next one, he has those top two levels of security. So maybe he's a top-level executive from maybe another country or another corporate office somewhere overseas, but he doesn't have the ITAR requirements. So again, he's still limited. Adding more security does make it more complicated from an administrative level, but again, you do have that ability to add those levels of security beyond what Windchill has out of the box. So again, the last one, this particular user has access to, it exists in all three groups, and therefore can get all the way through to the object itself. So taking a look at some use cases, you can either restrict or allow access based on ITAR requirements, so that's what we're going to use for our use case here. So the simplest way to set something like this up would be to create a single security label and just call it ITAR or however you want. Give it a possible value of yes or no. So yes, they need ITAR, meaning they must be in the ITAR group, or no, meaning everybody that has standard access controls can see this object. Again, you create that group at the organization level. Give it a name ITAR. Keep everything standardized. This will allow only those people in that group to access the object if the value is set to yes, and anybody within the product to see it if it's set to no. So we'll take a look here. So when you go to create a new document, it's different than if you don't have security labels implemented right now. This particular tab is not going to be here. Once you actually go through the process of implementing these is when the security labels tab will appear. So as you can see from the image, we have our 3 levels of security, and we can set 1, 2, 3, or any combination therein. And then that just pulls from the groups. So taking a look at this one here, we see the group that we created, ITAR. There's 3 members, ITAR 1 and 2, and also we have site admin. So again, any of those 3 users will be able to gain access to an object that has only the ITAR group assigned to it, or the ITAR security label. To go one step further, as we have our ITAR user 1. Right now, this user is in the ITAR sensitive group. So because this document 21 has that security label applied to it, he can see it. But what you don't see is the fact that there are 3 other documents, or there's 3 documents total in this product, but he can only see 1. If we move on to ITAR user 2, they have the ability to see anything that's in the ITAR group or level 1. So again, they can now see 2 of those 3 objects. And to finish it, we have our ITAR user 3, who is granted access to all 3 groups and all 3 security label access, so he can now see all 3 of those levels. One sort of nice thing about security labels is, as a site administrator, whether you're on the organization or not, you can search for documents. But with security labels, even the site administrator is restricted from seeing anything that has a security label applied to it. However, as a site administrator, you could ultimately add yourself to that group anyway. But up front, it shows how it can block from everybody, regardless of the level of access you have in Windchill. Taking a look at the different levels of security, security labels, it's one extra step on top of what already exists in PDM. First off, a user must be on the team of a product or library, assuming a non-admin. So even if a user is in a security label group applied to a document, if they are not on that product or library, they won't see it anyway. So that's your first step of security. Your second step is they must have read and download access to that particular object type. So if we're talking about a WT document and that particular user is in a role or has an access control that restricts them from seeing that particular object for some reason, again, they won't see it anyway. So the security label at that point doesn't really have any effect. And then the last level of security is those security label groups that they're assigned to. The last thing we're going to talk about is agreements. So again, if a user's in a particular group, obviously if they satisfy all of the aspects of the security labels applied, they get to see the object. There may also be certain times where there's specific people that you want to grant access to for a limited amount of time. This is when you can start using agreements. So these can provide exceptions to that security label value. Again, they're for a specific amount of time. So you can set it for so many days. The standard agreement can clear additional participants and grant them access. Any security label object can be associated with the standard agreement. So it's not like you have to create different agreements for each type of security label. You can create context-based agreements. For instance, if we have that ITAR security label that's used across multiple products, you can say, I only want to give them the agreement on this specific product for that security label. You can do that as well. So it's a way for you to trim on what can and can't be done. Agreements can only be created and modified by members of a specific group created at the site level. So the site administrators, when they set up security labels, they can set up these predefined groups of who can create and manage these agreements. Okay, so at this point, we'll go ahead and take any questions that you guys have.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody, for joining today. I hope this session was very insightful and informative. You can view today and all Quickbytes sessions on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/QuickbytesVideos. If you have any suggestions for Quickbyte topics, we will be also happy to accommodate. The link to submit your suggestions is available on your invite pages. Now we will be opening up the floor for questions. Remember, please post your questions in the chat room. Also, please participate in our poll that will be viewable in your screen in a couple seconds. Okay, Ryan, so our first question from our chat room today is, can specific people be granted the ability to apply security labels?
Actually, the way it's set up right now is security labels either turn on or off. There's no actual way to specify which users can apply these security labels, but through customizations, there are ways to implement that as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ryan. We have another question. Do agreements allow for export licensing?
That is actually a great question. I see, Darren, you brought that one up. I'll actually have to look into that one, and I'll get back to you on that question. I don't have that answer right now.
Okay. Another question. Do you search the results behave as, do the search results behave as with prior versions of Windshield and only show that to which you have access?
Yes, they do. So just like in 9.1, all of the versions of 10 function the same way for search. Again, the idea here is to restrict anybody that is not in these ITAR groups or any of these security label groups from seeing these objects. A lot of companies use very specific and confidential names in their naming documents. So the last place you'd want to see that pop up is in the search menu as well.
Thank you. Our next question. What are some common configuration errors that users might stumble on when setting up?
For the most part, there's not too many errors that we see in setup. A lot of times what you will see is there is a specific way that you need to configure security labels or also applying the values. So outside of that, once you set up the files and you set up the labels correctly, the only errors you'd see beyond that is a user accidentally applying a wrong security label. One additional note, too, with security labels. If I'm a user that's creating a new document, I can apply a security label to something that I'm not necessarily granted access to in a group. So a lot of times what I've seen is people create documents, apply sort of an ITAR or some sort of security label to it, and then can't figure out why they can't find that object. So that's one thing just to keep an eye out, too, is for accidental applications of those.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ryan. Our next question. Is there a way to implement labels on an existing database?
Yes. Actually, security labels are implemented at the application level and not at the database level. So it is possible to implement security labels at any point throughout the life of PDM-Link.
Thank you. Another question is, does changing a label require the object?
No, it does not require iterating the object. It's actually, if you're familiar with the interface, it's done through managed security. So to change a security label, you just go to your actions menu and manage security, and you can change, add additional security labels from that point as well.
Thank you, Ryan. What are the other use cases for security labels?
Well, as we discussed, you have your ITAR requirements. So you can do anything from requiring U.S. citizens, or you can even use security labels to grant maybe external manufacturers or external companies that have access to your PDM link. Maybe there's a specific subset of stuff they're supposed to not see within a product. So rather than creating additional domains within that product, you can apply your security labels to it so that they will not be able to see those particular objects within a folder. Because as we all know, access controls are governed at the product level and not necessarily the folder level.
Thank you, Ryan. Can we nest groups in the security label groups?
So the question is, can you use other groups within the security label groups? Yes, you can. So it's just like regular groups within Windchill. You can nest groups together. Ultimately, what it does is when you create the security labels, you're going to give the unique ID of that group. So it looks to that group in Windchill, and anything that falls underneath it would then apply to that security label.
Thank you, Ryan. I have another question for you. Can we query an external system to determine the basis of granting a user access to a given security label?
Yes, that can actually be done using a custom elevator Java class. So here we can query that external system and determine whether to grant the access or not. This is the customization that needs to be put in place, but yes, it can be done.
Thanks again, Ryan. I have another question for you. Can specific people be granted the ability to apply security labels?
Yeah, we mentioned that one earlier, but yes, it can be done through customization of the system, but unfortunately it's not able to be done with using the out-of-the-box tools. Like I said, if you turn on access security labels, everybody can apply them. Also, without customization, it's applicable to all object types. So whether you're creating an EPM document or a regular WT document, the wizard automatically has it there. All we're doing with security labels when you implement them is turning on or off that particular tab in the wizard.
Thank you, Ryan. Is there a way to restrict an object using the IP address of a request? Of the request, I do apologize.
I don't know if there's a way to restrict it to an IP address. I'll have to follow up on that one. It is possible for sure with customizing it, but out-of-the-box tools, I don't believe that's possible.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Can modified access be blocked by security labels?
Okay, so if this question is pertaining to access controls, the question is, can you use a security label to block somebody from modifying it, but all of the other access controls are in effect? No, the only thing security labels do is grant whether or not that object is accessible to you. So basically, it's sort of like a read access control, and if it's applied and you fit the groups, you see it. If you're not in the groups, you don't see it. So the access controls don't actually govern any other ACLs beyond that.
Sounds good, Ryan. Thank you for answering all these questions. I want to thank everybody for participating in these questions today. If you have any other questions, feel free. Our next question, can security labels only be applied to specific object types?
No, actually it's all types. It's basically an all or nothing situation. So again, you'd have to put some kind of customization in place to limit which object types they go. But at the current time, the question has even been brought up to PTC. At the current time, it's all objects or none.
Sounds good. I see another question here, Ryan. Can security labels be included as watermarks?